I still remember the day when my heart shattered into a million pieces. It was a humid summer afternoon in Atlanta, one of those days when the heat seems to press against your skin and every little sound carries the weight of fate. My name is Alex, and I've never felt as raw and exposed as I did in that moment, when the man I trusted more than anyone, my best friend and partner in life, Michael, turned his back on me. It wasn't always like this. Michael and I grew up together in a small Midwestern town, our bond cemented by shared secrets, wild dreams, and countless adventures that spanned from late-night talks under starlit skies to rebellious escapades that defied the confines of our quiet neighborhood. As we moved to the bustling urban landscape of Atlanta, the city promised new beginnings, and for a while, it delivered. We found our footing in the chaos of urban life, with hopes as high as the skyscrapers that define the skyline. We dreamed of creating a future together, one where every sunrise held the promise of success, recognition, and endless possibilities. I met Emily during one of those impassioned nights of self-discovery. She was a burst of energy, a whirlwind of confidence and vulnerability, and the spark that ignited a fire I thought would burn forever. With her, I discovered a tenderness in myself I never knew existed. The early days of our romance were idyllic, filled with shared laughter, whispered dreams in quiet diners, and heartfelt confessions beneath the canopy of an Atlanta summer. But as the days wore on, I started noticing subtle shifts. Emily became quieter, more distant, her warm glances replaced by vacant stares that left me questioning every word I thought I understood. While I grappled with the shifting tides of my relationship with Emily, Michael's behavior began to change too. The camaraderie that once defined our brotherhood became punctuated with odd silences and cryptic messages. At first, I chalked it up to the stress of adapting to a new city and the mounting pressures of our budding careers. Michael was chasing his own dreams, trying to carve out a niche in a world that seemed determined to swallow up his ambition. Yet, behind that relentless drive lay a secret I was about to discover in the most painful way possible. It started with a stray comment, a whispered remark in the dark of a lively party that hinted at something sinister. I had been drowning my doubts in a glass of bourbon when I overheard Michael laughing with someone I barely recognized. Their conversation was laced with a familiarity that sent chills down my spine, as if they shared an intimate history that I had been completely oblivious to. The name Ashley floated through the air, and I felt my heart sink. Ashley, someone I'd heard of in passing, but never imagined would play a role in my life. In the days that followed, the seeds of betrayal took root in the fertile ground of my confusion and despair. I noticed subtle changes in Michael's routine, missed calls, hurried excuses, and an unexplained aura of secrecy that cloaked his every word. At first, I wanted to dismiss it as mere coincidences, a series of unfortunate events in the tapestry of life. But the truth, as it often does, emerged like a relentless tide, eroding the foundations of trust we had built over years of brotherhood. One fateful evening, when the neon glow of downtown Atlanta painted the streets in surreal hues, I decided to confront the source of my anguish. I found Michael in a secluded corner of our favorite bar, a dimly lit refuge where we used to share our dreams, laugh until our stomachs ached, and plot our next great adventure. The familiar clink of glasses and low hum of conversation seemed to fade into the background as I approached him, my heart pounding in my ears like a relentless drum. "Mike," I began, my voice trembling with a mix of determination and dread, "we need to talk." His eyes, usually so open and reassuring, darted away for a fraction of a second before locking onto mine. That fleeting moment was enough to confirm every unspoken fear I had harbored since that overheard conversation. I pressed on, my words tumbling out in a rush of raw emotion. "Who is Ashley? What's been going on between you two?" The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's gaze dropped to the scarred wood of the bar counter, his face a mask of regret and pain. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, as if each word was a knife cutting deeper into the already wounded fabric of our friendship. "Alex, I never meant for you to find out like this. I didn't know how to tell you." At that moment, every shared memory, every secret promise we had made, crumbled into dust around us. The betrayal wasn't just an act. It was a complete unraveling of the trust and brotherhood that had defined our lives for so long. I felt as though I was drowning in an ocean of grief, each wave crashing over me with memories of better times now tainted by deception. As Michael confessed the long, convoluted tale of how he had fallen for Ashley, a charismatic stranger whose allure was as dangerous as it was irresistible, I struggled to piece together the fragments of my shattered reality. He described how she had swept into his life like a force of nature, her charm disarming his once unyielding sense of loyalty and commitment. Michael's words painted a picture of impulsive decisions made in the haze of desire and desperation, a narrative that left little room for redemption or understanding. I left that night with my mind in turmoil and my heart aching with betrayal. The streets of Atlanta, once full of promise, now felt like a labyrinth of shattered dreams and lost innocence. I returned to my apartment in a daze, every familiar corner now a reminder of the trust I had so carelessly broken. In the days that followed, I spiraled into an abyss of regret and sorrow, questioning every decision that had led me to that painful moment. The warmth of Emily's love, which had once been my beacon of hope, now seemed to mock my inability to see the truth. I spent countless hours scrolling through old messages, rereading conversations that now took on a sinister hue. Every laugh, every shared secret was tainted by the specter of betrayal. I recalled the promises made over cheap coffee, the shared dreams that seemed so genuine back then, and I wondered how everything had unraveled so inexplicably. The betrayal cut deep, not just because Michael had deceived me, but because it shattered the ideal of unconditional loyalty that I had held so dear. I began to isolate myself, retreating into silence as I tried to comprehend the magnitude of my loss. Friends reached out, offering words of comfort and urging me to forgive, to move on. But forgiveness felt like a betrayal of its own, a betrayal of the person I used to be and of the life we had built together. How could I ever trust again when the very foundation of my existence had been so callously dismantled? Days turned into weeks, and the raw pain slowly gave way to a numbing melancholy. I found solace in late-night walks along the Chattahoochee River, where the gentle murmur of water offered a fragile semblance of peace. The city that had once pulsed with promise now echoed with memories of a friendship lost, of trust betrayed by the very person I had once considered my brother. I started documenting my thoughts on a blog, a digital confessional that I hoped would one day make sense of the chaos swirling inside me. Every word was a catharsis, every sentence a step toward reclaiming parts of myself that had been buried beneath layers of sorrow. In those quiet moments, I grappled with a multitude of questions. How could love turn so sour? What did it mean to truly forgive when the wounds were still so raw? And most importantly, how could I ever rebuild the trust that had been so irrevocably shattered? As I typed away, the keys became an instrument of both pain and healing, a way to immortalize the lessons learned in the wake of betrayal, and a promise to myself that I would not be defined by this moment of weakness. Yet, even as I poured my heart onto the screen, a gnawing question persisted. Could the bonds of the past ever be mended? Or was this the irrevocable end of a chapter that had once promised so much? Michael's betrayal had not only altered the course of my life, it had left me questioning the very nature of loyalty, of love, and of the fragile human spirit that clings to hope in even the darkest of times. In the weeks that followed that fateful night, the raw intensity of my heartbreak began to morph into a quiet, burning resolve. I realized that despite the agony of betrayal, I still possessed a fierce desire to reclaim my life and redefine who I was beyond the wreckage of shattered trust. Every day was a battle against the inner demons that whispered incessantly, reminding me of the past, of Michael's betrayal, and of the love I had lost in the wake of deception. I immersed myself in work, determined not to let the betrayal dictate my future. Mornings became my sanctuary, a time to gather my thoughts and muster the strength to face a city that had transformed into a mirror of my internal turmoil. As the sun rose over Atlanta, I'd lace up my sneakers and jog along the familiar trails, the rhythmic pounding of my feet echoing the steady beat of a heart gradually learning to heal. The city, still aglow with its electric promise, provided a stark contrast to the quiet isolation that now accompanied my every step. During one of these early morning runs along the tree-lined paths of Piedmont Park, I encountered someone who would soon alter the course of my recovery. Her name was Samantha, a vibrant soul with an infectious laugh and eyes that seemed to hold a universe of compassion. She was jogging at a pace that matched my own, and as our paths intersected, a brief nod of acknowledgement blossomed into a series of casual conversations that, over time, stitched the first threads of hope back into my life. Samantha, with her unguarded sincerity, became a silent confidant. She had her own stories of loss and renewal, and in sharing her experiences, she helped me see that pain, though unbearable in its moment, could also be the precursor to transformation. Her presence was like a gentle reminder that life, with all its scars and bruises, still held moments of beauty. With her encouragement, I resumed writing on my blog, transforming my grief into a narrative of resilience. I poured out not only the memories of betrayal, but also the sparks of recovery. Each post a testament to the strength that can emerge from the depths of despair. Meanwhile, Emily, who had been the comforting presence of a love that once seemed eternal, was grappling with her own inner conflicts. Our relationship had taken on an air of quiet resignation, punctuated by long silences and hesitant glances. We had tried to bridge the chasm that Michael's betrayal had widened, but every conversation about trust or forgiveness seemed to lead us into a labyrinth of uncertainty. Our love, once full of vibrant promises and endless dreams, now teetered on the edge of a fragile truce, a coexistence marked by an unspoken acknowledgement of the past and an uncertain hope for the future. The turning point came unexpectedly during a cold December evening. I had been scribbling notes for a new blog post in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of downtown Atlanta when a familiar face walked through the door. Michael. His presence was like a ghost from a nightmare, stirring up emotions I had fought so hard to subdue. He didn't approach me immediately. Instead, he lingered at the back, his eyes filled with a remorse that I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I felt the weight of his gaze as if it were a tangible force, a reminder of the betrayal that had redefined my very existence. Unable to bear the silent confrontation any longer, I stood up and approached him. "Mike," I said, my voice steady but laced with restrained bitterness. "We need to talk. Really talk this time." His shoulders slumped as if the burden of guilt had finally become too heavy to bear. We found a secluded booth in the corner of the cafe, and for the next several hours, we delved into a conversation that was as painful as it was cathartic. Michael confessed his own internal struggle, how the allure of something forbidden had clouded his judgment, and how he now wrestled with a ceaseless remorse that was as corrosive as it was all-consuming. He spoke of Ashley, her intoxicating presence, the way she had effortlessly shattered the foundations of our trust, and in doing so, he revealed that his infidelity wasn't merely an act of betrayal against me, but a betrayal of himself. His eyes glistened with unshed tears as he admitted that he had been trying to fill a void within him, a void that he now recognized could never be filled by someone else's fleeting affection. I listened, my own heart torn between the desire to forgive and the lingering sting of the wounds that had yet to fully close. In that moment, I understood that forgiveness, if it were ever to be granted, would have to come from a place of profound understanding, a recognition that we were all flawed, desperate souls navigating a labyrinth of emotions, mistakes, and second chances. Yet, the conversation did little to soothe the aching emptiness inside me. It only reaffirmed the truth that some fractures once formed might never fully mend. As Michael left the cafe that night, a part of me wished I could summon the strength to forgive him completely, to erase the memory of his betrayal from the chapters of my past. But deep down, I knew that forgiveness was a journey, a long, arduous path paved with moments of vulnerability, self-reflection, and the willingness to let go of what once was. It wasn't about absolving him of his mistakes. It was about reclaiming my own sense of worth and understanding that my identity was not defined solely by the betrayals I had endured. Back at my apartment, as the city lights flickered against the darkness of the night, I sat down at my desk and began to write again. This time, my words were not laced with the raw agony of betrayal, but were imbued with a newfound clarity, a resolve to rise above the scars and find meaning in the pain. I recounted the moments of despair, the nights spent questioning whether love could ever be pure again, and the slow, deliberate steps toward healing. Each word was a declaration that I would not be confined by the memories of betrayal. Instead, I would allow them to propel me into a future where trust, though fragile, could be rebuilt piece by piece. As the pages filled with my confessions, I couldn't help but reflect on the duality of human nature. The capacity for both love and betrayal, for hope and despair. In the quiet solitude of those late-night writing sessions, I began to see that every painful experience was a lesson, a stepping stone on the path toward self-discovery. The narrative of my life was no longer solely about the betrayal I had suffered. It was about the journey of resilience, the arduous climb toward reclaiming a sense of self that had been nearly obliterated by the weight of deception. I began to realize that true strength wasn't the absence of pain, but the courage to confront it, to allow it to transform you, rather than define you. And as I stared out at the sprawling cityscape, a tapestry of countless dreams and broken promises, I made a silent vow to myself. To embrace every scar, every tear, as a testament to my survival, and to build a future that honored both the love I had lost and the hope that still flickered in the darkness. In the weeks that followed our heart-wrenching conversation, I found myself teetering on the edge of transformation. A fragile existence balanced between the weight of past betrayals and the hope of forging a future defined by authenticity. Life in Atlanta, with its pulsating rhythm and relentless energy, carried me forward even as every familiar street corner reminded me of lost promises and broken bonds. My blog, once a solitary echo of despair, had become a canvas on which I could project not only my anguish, but also the tender hues of recovery. I began to immerse myself in the daily rituals that helped ground me. Early morning runs along the river, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee in cozy cafes, and the simple pleasure of watching the sunrise over the city skyline. Each new day, I carved out moments of quiet reflection, moments that allowed me to reconcile the man I once was with the man I was becoming. Slowly, I started to understand that betrayal, as devastating as it was, could serve as a catalyst for profound self-discovery. It was in the silence after Michael's departure that I started questioning every aspect of my identity, my values, my vulnerabilities, and the way I approached love. Amid these reflections, Samantha remained a constant presence, her quiet strength and unwavering compassion offering solace on days when the weight of my memories felt unbearable. We spent long evenings discussing everything from literature to the intricacies of human connection. Her insight was gentle yet unyielding, urging me to confront the raw scars of the past while embracing the possibilities of renewal. It was during one of our long walks through the bustling streets of Midtown that she revealed a piece of her own story, a tale of shattered dreams and the painstaking journey toward healing. In her eyes, I saw not pity, but an understanding born of similar heartaches, and that connection helped me realize that we were all, in our own way, seeking redemption. As autumn settled over Atlanta, painting the city in fiery hues of red and gold, I decided it was time to confront the lingering specter of Michael's betrayal more directly. One crisp evening, I arranged to meet him at a quiet park away from the neon glare of downtown. The park, with its sprawling oak trees and gentle rustle of falling leaves, became a sacred stage for the reconciliation of past wrongs and the acceptance of painful truths. There, under the canopy of an ancient oak, I asked him once more about the choices that had led us astray. Michael's voice wavered as he recounted his spiraling descent, a path paved with impulsive decisions, misguided desires, and the insidious lure of someone who had promised escape from his inner void. "Alex," he began, his tone heavy with remorse. "I've tried to convince myself that I was searching for something I could never have, something that would fill the emptiness inside me. But in doing so, I lost sight of who I was supposed to be, and I betrayed the very person who knew me best." His words, raw and unfiltered, were like shards of broken glass that cut through the fog of my own disillusionment. It was not just a confession of infidelity, but an admission of his failure to nurture the bond we had spent decades cultivating. Listening to him, I felt a cocktail of emotions: anger, sorrow, and an unexpected twinge of pity for a friend who had been consumed by his inner demons. I realized that Michael was not entirely the villain of our shared story, but a man who had been overwhelmed by his own insecurities and a profound sense of inadequacy. Yet that did not erase the betrayal. It merely complicated it, layering it with a melancholy that was as inevitable as the changing seasons. I left the park that evening with a conflicted heart, unsure whether to embrace forgiveness or to let the scars of the past fester as a reminder of a love lost to folly. In the ensuing months, I turned to the creative arts as a means of exercising my inner turmoil. I enrolled in a creative writing workshop, where like-minded individuals gathered to share their stories, hopes, and the lessons gleaned from life's darkest moments. Here, I found a community that celebrated the beauty of imperfection, a space where every tear-streaked confession was met with empathy, and every story of redemption was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The workshop became a beacon of hope, illuminating the path toward healing through the transformative power of art. At one such session, I encountered a young man named Jason, an aspiring musician with eyes that held a quiet intensity and a past as tumultuous as my own. His music, a blend of raw acoustic melodies and soulful lyrics, resonated with the ache of someone who had faced the abyss and emerged with a deeper understanding of life's fragility. Jason's journey, punctuated by moments of despair and the sweet relief of catharsis, mirrored my own in many ways. Over time, our friendship deepened, and his creative spirit inspired me to experiment with my writing. I began to explore themes of redemption, the bittersweet nature of love, and the paradox of vulnerability, a vulnerability that was both a source of strength and a gateway to pain. Yet even as I built new bridges of friendship and creative expression, the ghost of betrayal lingered, haunting quiet nights and stirring up memories of whispered promises and shattered illusions. Emily, too, was on her own path toward healing, though our journey together had grown increasingly complex. Our attempts to rebuild our relationship were marred by silent disagreements and unspoken accusations, remnants of a time when trust had been a given rather than a fragile construct to be carefully nurtured. Our conversations, though tender at times, were interspersed with long pauses where the past seemed to hover between us like a specter, refusing to be forgotten. One particularly stormy night, as rain battered the windows of our shared apartment, Emily and I finally faced the painful truth. Our love, once vibrant and all-encompassing, had been irrevocably altered. In the flickering candlelight, we sat facing each other, the air thick with the weight of unspoken words. "Alex," Emily began softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, "I love you, but I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when the hurt is still so raw." Her confession, simple yet devastating, cut through the veneer of normalcy we had tried so hard to maintain. We spent hours talking, not about the good times but about the fractures in our bond, the moments of betrayal that had slowly eroded the foundation of our shared dreams. That night, as the storm outside raged on, I made a decision that would shape the trajectory of my future. I realized that clinging to a love tainted by mistrust was a disservice not only to Emily, but also to the person I needed to become. It was time to accept that some bonds, no matter how deeply cherished, were meant to evolve or even dissolve in the face of irrevocable hurt. With a heavy heart, I gently suggested that we take a step back, a pause that might one day lead to healing, even if it meant parting ways in the immediate present. Emily's tearful nod was both an affirmation of the pain we shared and a hopeful acknowledgement that sometimes letting go was the most compassionate act of love. In the quiet that followed, I turned once more to my writing. Every keystroke on my aging laptop was a defiant act against the despair that threatened to overwhelm me. I chronicled my journey through heartache and betrayal, not as a series of isolated events, but as a continuum of growth, a narrative that celebrated both the agony of loss and the quiet triumph of resilience. I wrote about the beauty of imperfection, the courage it took to face one's demons, and the transformative power of self-forgiveness. Through my words, I aimed to create a sanctuary for anyone who had ever felt lost in the aftermath of betrayal, a place where scars were seen not as marks of weakness, but as badges of survival. As winter gradually yielded to the promise of spring, Atlanta itself seemed to awaken from a long, tormented slumber. The bitter cold gave way to gentle rains and the tentative buds of new beginnings. In that seasonal rebirth, I found a metaphor for my own journey, a slow, sometimes painful process of renewal that, while never erasing the past, allowed for the emergence of something new and beautiful. I realized that forgiveness was not a destination, but a journey, a delicate, ongoing process of reconciling with the past while daring to hope for a future where trust could be rebuilt, brick by careful brick. In the midst of this personal renaissance, I received an unexpected message from Michael. It was brief, a simple apology and a request to meet again, this time not for confrontation, but for closure. Unsure of how to proceed, I hesitated, caught between the remnants of old anger and the nascent desire to heal fully. Yet, in that moment, I recognized that closure was essential for both of us, a final opportunity to acknowledge the shared pain, to mourn what had been lost, and perhaps to part ways with a sense of understanding, rather than lingering resentment. I agreed to meet him at a quiet lakeside park on the outskirts of the city. The setting was serene, a tranquil expanse of water reflecting a sky streaked with the soft hues of twilight. As we sat on a weathered bench facing the lake, Michael's voice broke the silence. "Alex, I know my apologies can never undo the hurt I've caused, but I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday. I want to believe that, even in the midst of our failures, there's a chance for redemption, for both of us." His words, though laden with regret, carried a sincerity that resonated deep within me. In that quiet moment, I found myself on the brink of a decision that would liberate me from the chains of past wounds. I acknowledged that forgiveness might not erase the pain, but it could transform it into something that fueled growth and deeper self-understanding. With the cool evening air wrapping around us like a comforting shroud, I offered Michael a tentative smile. "I appreciate your honesty, Mike. I'm not saying everything will be okay immediately, but I do believe that holding on to this pain isn't helping either of us move forward." It wasn't an absolution, nor a promise of renewed friendship. It was simply an acceptance of the imperfections inherent in our human nature. In that exchange, beneath a sky that held the promise of countless tomorrows, I began to see that every heartbreak contained the seed of renewal, every betrayal a lesson etched into the tapestry of life. As the night drew to a close, I returned home with a quiet determination to continue this arduous yet ultimately rewarding journey toward healing. I continued to pour my soul into every line I wrote, every step I took along Atlanta's winding streets, and every moment of vulnerability that emerged in the quiet solitude of my thoughts. In time, I began to see that the scars of betrayal were not marks of defeat, but rather symbols of the depth of love and the resilience required to overcome life's most painful challenges. In the chapters that followed, I resolved to embrace every facet of my journey, both the darkness of sorrow and the gentle light of hope, as integral parts of who I was. And so, with each passing day, as Atlanta blossomed anew in the embrace of spring, I forged ahead, determined to build a future where trust, though fragile and elusive, could once again be nurtured, not out of naive hope, but out of the hard-won wisdom that only life's deepest betrayals can bestow. As the days turned into months, and the embers of past betrayals slowly began to cool, I found myself standing at a crossroads, between what had been and what could yet be. The emotional scars, though still tender at times, had started to transform into quiet reminders of lessons learned and strength gained. I continued to write each night, not only as a form of catharsis, but also as a way to document the gradual emergence of a man who was learning to love again, starting with himself. I spent many evenings reflecting by the window of my apartment, watching the city lights of Atlanta shimmer like distant promises. There was a profound beauty in these quiet moments of solitude, a gentle pause after the storms of emotion and regret had finally subsided. It was during one such reflective night that I realized I was no longer defined solely by the betrayal and heartbreak of my past. Instead, I was gradually piecing together a mosaic of experiences. The love I had lost, the friendship that was fractured, and the surprising new connections that life had presented along the way. Samantha remained a steadfast presence in my life. Her warm smile and empathetic nature had grown into something more profound than casual friendship. We began to share long, unguarded conversations about everything from our childhood dreams to our deepest insecurities. In her eyes, I saw not pity, but an honest reflection of my own struggles, a mirror that revealed both my vulnerabilities and my untapped reservoirs of courage. Together, we explored the city's hidden corners, quiet coffee shops tucked away in side streets, late-night jazz sessions in intimate venues, and sunlit afternoons in parks where the laughter of children and the rustle of leaves reminded us of life's simple joys. Our bond grew stronger with each shared moment, gradually evolving into a delicate dance of healing and hope. I found myself opening up about the darkest moments of my journey, the betrayal that had nearly torn me apart, and in doing so, I discovered that true healing often comes from embracing every facet of our experiences, no matter how painful. Samantha's unwavering support taught me that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but rather a doorway to genuine connection. With her encouragement, I began to consider that perhaps love, in its truest form, wasn't about perfection or unblemished trust, but about the courage to rebuild and forgive, even when the wounds ran deep. Yet, despite this burgeoning hope, the past still cast its long shadow. There were nights when memories of Michael's betrayal and the unraveling of my relationship with Emily crept in unexpectedly, leaving me reeling with guilt and sorrow. In those moments, I would turn to my journal and let the raw, unfiltered truth spill onto the page, a desperate act of releasing the pain that clung to me like a second skin. It was a struggle to reconcile the man I had been with the man I aspired to become, but with every word written, I edged closer to a version of myself that could accept both the light and the dark. In time, I began to build new routines that celebrated this hard-won growth. I signed up for a weekend retreat focused on mindfulness and creative expression, a space designed for individuals to confront their inner demons and emerge renewed. There, amid a community of strangers who were united by their shared quest for healing, I discovered that pain was not an isolated burden, but a universal experience. We spent our days engaging in meditative walks through forested trails and our evenings in heartfelt group discussions, each person bearing their soul in the safe embrace of empathy and understanding. During one of those group sessions, I met Jordan, a gentle soul whose own journey had been marked by profound loss and unexpected recovery. His quiet wisdom and unassuming nature struck a chord with me, and over time, our conversations evolved from simple exchanges to deep discussions about redemption, identity, and the transformative power of forgiveness. Jordan reminded me that while betrayal had once seemed like the final chapter of my story, it was, in fact, merely a painful prelude to a narrative of resilience and renewal. Back in Atlanta, life continued its steady pace, and I found myself increasingly immersed in the creative arts. I began collaborating with local musicians and artists, pouring my emotions into paintings and lyrics that captured the intricate interplay of love, loss, and the indomitable spirit of rebirth. It was through these creative endeavors that I finally began to see beauty in my scars, a tangible reminder that every hardship carried with it the potential for growth. My blog, once a solitary outpouring of grief, transformed into a vibrant chronicle of transformation, resonating with others who had faced their own betrayals and found the strength to move forward. One cool spring afternoon, as I walked along the bustling streets of downtown Atlanta with Samantha by my side, I reflected on how far I had come. The city, with its blend of old soul and modern ambition, mirrored my own journey, a blend of cherished memories and hopeful aspirations. The familiar sound of street musicians playing soulful tunes, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the scent of blooming magnolias, and the sight of strangers exchanging warm smiles, all converged to remind me that every ending bore the seed of a new beginning. That day, I decided to take a detour. A spontaneous journey to revisit the old neighborhood where my life had once been defined by the bonds of friendship and love. I wanted to confront my past not with bitterness, but with the resolve to reclaim the joy that had once been overshadowed by betrayal. Standing in the park, where Michael and I had spent countless hours dreaming of a brighter future, I allowed myself a moment of bittersweet nostalgia. The trees whispered stories of summers long gone, and the gentle rustling of leaves carried with it both the pain of what was lost and the promise of what was yet to come. In that quiet reverie, I recognized that forgiveness was not an absolution for the sins of the past, but a liberating act of reclaiming my future. I thought of Emily, of Michael, and of all the fragments of my past that had shaped me into the person I was today. It was a mosaic of imperfect pieces, a blend of mistakes, resilience, and the constant striving for redemption. I realized that each of these pieces was essential in forging a path forward, a path that was uniquely mine and rich with the lessons of a tumultuous life. With a heart both heavy and hopeful, I resolved to honor every experience, joyful or painful, as a necessary chapter in my unfolding story. I understood that healing was not linear. It was a winding, unpredictable journey that demanded patience, self-compassion, and an unwavering belief in the possibility of renewal. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, I embraced the paradox that life was both fragile and resilient, a delicate balance between holding on and letting go. In that twilight moment, I realized that the true measure of strength lay not in denying the pain of betrayal, but in transforming that pain into a force for positive change. Every scar, every tear had become a testament to the battles fought and the victories won, however small they might seem. And as I looked toward the future, I carried with me the lessons of my past, the understanding that while trust might be fragile, the human spirit was unbreakable. As the seasons turned once again, I began to see that life had a way of orchestrating unexpected reunions and gentle farewells. One cool evening, as the gentle hum of the city provided a soft backdrop, I met with Samantha at our favorite overlook, a quiet, secluded spot on the outskirts of Atlanta where the twinkling city lights seemed to echo the distant stars. It was here, with the cool breeze stirring memories and hopes alike, that I felt the weight of every painful chapter slowly begin to lift. We sat side by side, our silence filled with a mutual understanding of the journeys we had both endured. Samantha's hand found mine, and in that simple touch there was a promise that the past, with all its scars, was no longer a chain to hold us back, but a bridge to a future filled with possibility. We spoke of forgiveness, not as a grand, instantaneous miracle, but as a gradual, sometimes bittersweet process of letting go. The conversation meandered through memories of heartbreak and dreams of tomorrow, until at last, a serene calm settled over us. In the months that followed, I found myself drawn into new creative projects that allowed me to translate my tumultuous emotions into art. I collaborated with local writers, musicians, and painters who had also tasted the bitterness of betrayal and the sweetness of recovery. Together, we organized intimate gatherings where our stories interwove, creating a tapestry of resilience, hope, and the undeniable strength of the human spirit. Every shared laugh and every tear shed in those meetings reaffirmed that our pain had a purpose. It was the raw material from which new dreams were forged. One day, while returning from one of these gatherings, I walked through a neighborhood where murals spoke louder than words. Among them, a vibrant painting of a phoenix rising from the ashes caught my eye. Its colors were bold, its message clear. From the deepest ruins, beauty can be reborn. Staring at the mural, I couldn't help but see my own journey mirrored in that majestic rebirth. I realized that the betrayal I once considered the darkest moment of my life had ultimately paved the way for my own transformation. Slowly, the emotional wounds that had once seemed insurmountable began to fade into memories, less like gaping scars and more like subtle brushstrokes on the canvas of my life. I learned to embrace every facet of my story, understanding that every moment of despair was also a stepping stone toward a greater understanding of myself. It wasn't about erasing the past, but about integrating it, so that each chapter, painful or joyful, contributed to the unique mosaic of who I had become. One crisp morning, as the sun broke through a canopy of mist, I sat down at my old desk, fingers poised above the keyboard. I felt compelled to write one final entry, a farewell to the chapter of betrayal, a tribute to the lessons learned, and an acknowledgement of the enduring beauty of resilience. In that moment of quiet reflection, I realized that I was not writing an ending, but a new beginning, a commitment to live honestly, love wholeheartedly, and forgive completely. With that thought as my guide, I began to write. My words flowed freely as I recounted the journey from the depths of despair to the gentle light of renewal. I wrote of Michael, Not as the villain of my story, but as a reflection of our shared human frailty, and of Emily, whose love had once been a sanctuary, even when fraught with the pain of unhealed wounds. I acknowledge that every relationship, no matter how cherished, carries the risk of loss and the possibility of growth. As the final lines of that entry took shape, a profound sense of closure washed over me. I realized that every experience, no matter how excruciating at the moment, had contributed to a richer, more nuanced understanding of life. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the tentative steps toward forgiveness, and the emergence of new love and friendship had all woven together to create a narrative that was uniquely mine, a story of transformation, perseverance, and ultimately, hope. I set down my pen, looked up at the fading light, and felt an overwhelming gratitude for the journey I had been on. I knew that there would always be moments of lingering pain, echoes of memories that might unsettle me in the quiet hours of the night, but I also understood that these were the very marks of a life lived fully and authentically. I had learned that closure isn't about forgetting, it's about accepting every part of your story and carrying forward the lessons it has taught you. And so, with a steady heart and eyes open to the promise of tomorrow, I embraced the future. I knew that my journey of healing was far from over, that life, in all its unpredictable beauty, would continue to challenge and inspire me. But I was ready to face new days with the wisdom of the past and the hope of every sunrise yet to come. This, dear reader, is where I find myself now, at the crossroads of memory and possibility, with a heart scarred but unbroken, a spirit tempered by hardship and buoyed by hope. I want you to know that if you ever feel lost in your own darkness, there is always a path to light, a way to rebuild trust and the courage to embrace life once again. I promise you, when this chapter finally reaches its conclusion, I will let you know that the end has come. For now, as our journey together continues, I invite you to walk with me a little longer, to savor every bittersweet moment and to celebrate the resilience that lies within us all. In the wake of that twilight conversation at the lakeside park, time began to reveal its quiet, transformative power. It was as if each day was a small act of defiance against the shadows of my past, a deliberate choice to embrace life with all its bittersweet contradictions. I settled into a rhythm that was both unpredictable and healing. Mornings found me revisiting familiar haunts and discovering hidden corners of Atlanta that seemed to whisper gentle encouragements. Afternoons were dedicated to long walks in the city's sprawling parks, where the simple act of observing life, the way leaves danced in the wind or the murmurs of strangers sharing fleeting smiles, reminded me that hope is often found in the smallest details. During this season of gradual renewal, I received an unexpected letter. It arrived in a plain, unadorned envelope with Michael's handwriting on the front, a reminder of a friendship that had once been my anchor. I hesitated before opening it, my heart tightening with the dual pull of curiosity and lingering hurt. When I finally broke the seal, I found that Michael had written with a clarity and vulnerability that caught me off guard. In his carefully chosen words, he spoke not just of regret, but of a deep-seated yearning to atone for the betrayal that had fractured our bond. He recounted his own journey towards self-forgiveness and offered reflections on how, in the solitude of his nights, he had come to understand that the search for validation in someone else's arms was nothing more than a misguided attempt to fill an internal void. His letter did not ask for immediate forgiveness or a return to what we once had. Rather, it was an invitation to both of us to acknowledge the scars we bore and, perhaps in time, find a way to heal together from the wounds of our shared past. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it away in a drawer, a silent testament to the complexity of human emotions and the enduring possibility of redemption. As I continued my journey, I began to reconnect with other old friends and forge new relationships that challenged me to view the world through different, more hopeful lenses. I started attending community gatherings, where I met individuals who had also experienced their own forms of heartache. Their stories, though distinct from mine, echoed a universal truth: that the path to healing is seldom linear, and that every setback carries within it the seed of growth. One evening, as autumn deepened into winter and the chill in the air hinted at the promise of new beginnings, Samantha and I hosted a small gathering at my apartment. The space was modest, but it pulsed with the warmth of shared stories and genuine connection. Friends and acquaintances gathered to talk about everything, from lost love to newfound aspirations. In that intimate setting, I witnessed the beauty of collective vulnerability, how the simple act of sharing our struggles created a tapestry of support that transcended individual pain. I took a moment during the gathering to read aloud a passage I had written, one that captured the essence of my journey from betrayal to tentative hope. The room fell silent, as my voice carried the weight of my memories and the soft promise of a future unburdened by past mistakes. In that silence, I sensed that even the deepest wounds could find solace in the gentle acknowledgement of shared humanity. It was a reminder that while some chapters of our lives might be marked by heartbreak, they also paved the way for redemption, growth, and an appreciation for the transient beauty of existence. Months passed in a delicate dance of reflection and forward movement. I revisited places that held the echoes of my earlier despair, not to relive the pain, but to reclaim those memories as part of my evolving identity. I walked down streets where Michael and I had once planned endless futures, and I stood in parks where the laughter of friends had once mingled with promises of unbreakable loyalty. With each visit, I allowed myself to see the past in a new light, understanding that every experience, joyful or sorrowful, had contributed to the person I was becoming. In one particularly poignant moment, I found myself at a small, serene lake on the outskirts of the city. The water, calm and reflective, seemed to mirror the journey of my soul. I sat on a weathered bench, letting the cool breeze carry away the remnants of old grief. It was in that quiet solitude that I finally understood the delicate balance between holding on and letting go. Forgiveness, I realized, was not an act of erasure, but a courageous acceptance of every fragment of our history, a promise to honor the past without being chained to its pain. That day marked a turning point. I resolved to write one final, comprehensive entry, a culmination of all the lessons learned and all the emotions weathered. With deliberate care, I recounted the moments of betrayal, the painful encounters, the gentle reconciliations, and the unanticipated blessings of new love and understanding. I spoke of Michael not as a villain, but as a flawed human being whose own journey was as fraught with error as it was with the possibility of growth. I spoke of Emily with tenderness, acknowledging that even in our parting, there was a shared history that had taught us about the complexities of love. And I spoke of Samantha and Jordan, whose presence had illuminated the path to recovery with the gentle light of compassion and creativity. As I typed the final words of that entry, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The story I had lived, a tapestry woven with threads of betrayal, regret, loss, and ultimately hope, was mine to own. It was a story that had transformed me, teaching me that every scar is a marker of survival, and every tear a reminder of our capacity to feel deeply. And so, with a steady hand and an open heart, I set the document aside, aware that while this chapter of my life had reached a form of closure, the journey of self-discovery would continue to evolve with every new day. Dear reader, if you have walked with me through these winding paths of pain and renewal, know that this installment comes with a promise. I will always be transparent with you when the final page is written, when the last word of this long and winding story is laid to rest. For now, as I embrace the soft glow of the coming dawn, I carry with me the lessons of every heartbreak, every gentle moment of forgiveness, and the quiet conviction that life's most profound transformations often begin in the depths of our despair. This is not yet the end, but another step forward. A step into a future where hope triumphs over hurt, and where every ending sows the seeds for a new beginning.